I'm Scott Pompa, born and raised in Carbon County. I secured a friendship for life with my childhood neighbor, Chris Lukasevich. We grew up together atop Packer Hill in Jim Thorpe. As children, we played with Tonkas, shared Golden Sun potato chips on the porch at Rebold's store, and loved football. Upon graduating from Jim Thorpe High, Chris Lukasevich commenced a career serving his country, became an Army Ranger, served the Special Forces, and worked from the Pentagon. After an outstanding 34 years of service, Chris Lukasevich retired and returned with his family to Carbon County. Now a veteran, Chris Lukasevich announced he is a candidate for Carbon County Commissioner in 2019. Proven accomplishments as a leader in the Army and a continuing education at Lehigh University have prepared Chris Lukasevich with common sense and intelligence to be your Carbon County Commissioner. If it matters to you, it matters to Chris.
I'm Chris Lukasevich, candidate for Carbon County Commissioner in 2019. I approve this message.
And speaking of superstars, with me today in the broadcast studios, a young man who wants to be one of Carbon County's next government officials. And Chris Lukasevich is with us today. And Chris, thank you so much for stopping by. And you've been doing the world tour, so to speak, right? You've been all over media and Lehigh Valley, all over Carbon County, and you're really starting to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. We're kind of in the middle of our branding campaign, getting that Lukasevich name back out there as part of an overall strategy that really kicked off in August of 2016 as, I worked towards fulfilling what I think is a responsibility to individuals in this county who have been so critical in my formation of my character and my work ethic, right, and which has really laid the foundation for the successes I've had as in my personal life and professional life, Bob.
Right. Now, Chris Lukasevich was born and raised here in the Jim Thorpe area, and your grandmother, known to many as a council person in Jim Thorpe, right?
Right. Edie Lukasevich, 91 years old,
Wow.
just elected again last year for Jim Thorpe Borough Council, out there trying to continue to make a difference for the citizens of Jim Thorpe. And I have to admire her for her energy and desire to continue to make a difference throughout her life.
Now, was that an influence, or now you have a military background
Right.
and 34 years in the military,
Right.
and worked your way all the way up to a colonel now, and you retired, and you were I guess you would call it an Army Ranger, but back in the day in the Vietnam era was Green Beret. And then were they similar in respects? Right?
Actually, they're uniquely different.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Rangers are more like commandos.
Okay.
They go in, attack a target, and come right out. Whereas Green Berets, unconventional warfare, we will go into an area, work with the indigenous or local, let's say, tribes, people, or military, train them, assist with their equipping, and then advise them and guide them during combat operations. So we go in for the long haul. We're very extremely and deeply trained in language, culture, and able to assimilate ourselves into those unique security-challenged environments.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Rangers are more like a quick strike force, and
That's right. Whereas SF, Special Forces, Green Berets, normally you're going in for the long haul to work with those indigenous forces.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you entrench. Basically become entrenched with the locals, right?
That's right. Yeah, and it's really important because you learn, because we do unconventional warfare, you tend to look at problems differently. Your solutions, how you look at potential courses of action to solve problems is really unique from, let's say, conventional thinking.
Gotcha.
You're forced to think outside the box, if I could use that term.
Right. Now, for you, your background, like I said, you grew up here in the Jim Thorpe area, and Scott Pompa, who I've gotten to meet, and just what a wonderful man.
Yep.
And you guys have been best friends from the time you were little.
Right.
And he said, I could tell back in the day that Chris was going to be something special and become a leader, because when you guys used to play Army around the neighborhoods and in the local cemeteries and stuff, he said that you were the guy that would take charge, and you really went after it. So from the time you were a little kid, you became very interested in the armed forces.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really have to go to March, April 1966, when I wasn't even 4 years old, when that flame for selfless service to join the Army really started
At
burning
4,
inside me.
That's amazing at 4. I mean, that you know at that young age.
Yeah, but it was, and again, being up here with PPR, Penn's Peak Radio, in the studio, it brings me back to, well, what was that motivating element that really created this desire to join the Army? And it was, the #1 hit throughout the month of March 1966, the first week of April, the #1 hit. And, I have these albums on my
you
wall,
still have the
right? Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler, the Ballad of the Green Berets. I mean, that inspired me. I literally, and this was my brother's album.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I literally wore the needle down to a nub, playing that so many times. And at just under 4 years old, I determined what I thought would be my life's ambition and goal, to wear that Green Beret.
It's funny you bring that up, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking back to when 1966. I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And back then, we used to play Army around our neighborhood
Yeah.
too. Like from 8 to 12, and we would play, because when I grew up, combat was big, and then the Rat Patrol.
Right.
And I was really big into World War II back in the day.
Yeah.
When I went to school, I loved history, and I was just young then. But my father and my uncle both fought in World War II. They were in the Navy, and they were active duty in Okinawa.
Wow.
My father was on a minesweeper that was sunk by a kamikaze plane.
Oh, my gosh. Well,
And he survived, thank God, or I wouldn't have been here. But the stories, they didn't tell a lot of stories, but a couple of the stories they would tell were pretty poignant. And you're like, whoa, and from that point on, I became very interested too. And when I was younger, I wanted to become a Marine, but I was legally blind in my left eye.
Right.
So back then, they were like, nah.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised that you speak about that generation didn't really speak much of their service to our country. And that really, the special forces that I've been a member of, special operations, uses the term quiet professionals.
Exactly.
And that's what our parents and grandparents were. They went out, they did the job.
They didn't brag.
And didn't brag about it. They were true quiet professionals. I didn't know, I thought my dad did a couple of years in the service and got out. I'm talking 2 or 3 years during World War II. Well, come to find out after the fact, after he passed away, he had done 7 years in the Navy. He was in the Armed Merchant Guard of the Navy. He was at off of Omaha and Utah Beach at D+1.
Wow.
And just those things that they just didn't talk about. And I feel maybe that I missed something of his life because that wasn't shared with me.
Yeah, I feel the same, because after my father passed away, my mom had a lot of things that I went through, and, I didn't go through them until probably a year ago. My mom passed away a couple of years ago, and I had trouble going through things for about a year after it, and then finally I was able to kind of, wrap myself around it and not get that upset anymore, and I went through, and I found all these old pictures of my dad with a red beard, out here, a picture on the minesweeper, and, and the PT boats, John F. Kennedy was on PT 104 back in the day, and apparently that they, back in World War II, when those PT boats and those things, my dad would tell me things about those, but he wouldn't talk about primarily his personal service.
Yeah.
But then when I came across all these pictures, I'm like, I'm like, whoa, my dad was like into it,
That's right, yeah.
But the only story he ever really told me was the one about the kamikaze.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You mentioned John F. Kennedy and the PT 109 because that
PT
was
109. That's
the
right.
PT 109 because that was another a song by Jimmy Dean during that era.
Right.
Jimmy Dean sung about John F. Kennedy and the PT 109, and I could sit here and sing that whole song probably.
And I had that model. I built that. model, the PT 109. I don't know why it's a 104.
That
but,
McHale's Navy.
Oh my God,
right.
McHale's Navy.
Since you mentioned
And
combat
Gomer
in the
Pyle.
Rat Patrol, Gomer Pyle. Yeah. That all brings me to veterans because you talk about, your family members and my dad. There's almost 6,000 veterans here in Carbon County.
Wow.
By percentage, the third largest concentration of veterans in Pennsylvania by county. So a significant amount of veterans here in Carbon County. And it's great for my wife Maggie, who's also a veteran, to be back in a community that is really so known for its selfless service to our country and to the citizens here in Carbon County. I find that amazing. What I don't find so amazing, I was reviewing, have to jump into it, I was reviewing the county budget. And, I attended the prison board meeting yesterday, and I was looking at the budget for the prison. About 200, 225 inmates up there. we spend $5.1 million on simply the prison alone, housing criminals. Let's shoot straight. Housing criminals, $5.1 million. It's about $26,000 a criminal a year. You know what the budget is in Carbon County for veteran outreach? $154,000. That's about
Total?
$26 a veteran. Now, people may say, well, apples and oranges, criminals and veterans require a different amount of resources. Absolutely they do, but it points to a bigger issue, I believe. Challenges that we have in society that we have to apply time, effort, and of course, money too. But it just seems like our balance is off. When you're comparing $26,000 for a criminal, $26 for a veteran.
Yeah, that's just so far in a way. I mean, that's unbelievable, the imbalance right there. But the thing that bothers me, Chris, also is veterans were kind of lost until the early 2000s. And God forbid, I wish, and I'm sure you too, wish it never happened. But 9/11, the one thing that came out of 9/11 was recognition for the veterans, recognition for emergency personnel, police officers, fire officials, EMTs, people who first responders. That was the one good thing that came out of 9/11. At least these people who sacrificed their lives every day and sacrificed their lives for their country finally got some recognition. I had a ton of friends who were Vietnam veterans, right?
Right, yeah.
Who were discriminated against and treated like garbage.
Yep.
And they didn't want to talk about their service for a number of reasons. Many of them were ashamed that they were in the Vietnam War. And they were, and just finally, 9/11 got people to notice, hey, these Vietnam veterans, a lot of them went there and put their lives on the line in a war that they weren't supposed to win, you know?
Right.
And that's nothing to be, they should be proud of that service,
Absolutely, and we should be grateful that they went on our behalf.
Yes.
Absolutely. Incredible, and that makes up the largest veteran population, or the Vietnam veterans. Absolutely. We have very few World War II veterans left. We're under 300 World War II veterans in Carbon County now. So again, we need to be grateful to them, the first responders, and individuals like that now while they're still around, and we have the opportunity to show our gratitude for them.
Exactly. Now, so you and I were talking yesterday, and I found it very interesting the way you had constructed your thought process and related to me. You said that because you received such a good education and this area helped develop the kind of person you became, that you felt after you got out of the military that you wanted to give back to this community as sort of a thank you, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeking the Carbon County Commissioner's position.
Absolutely. I was fortunate. I grew up above where Asa Packer has his mansion. I had 5 or 6 mothers in that neighborhood, and they helped shape my character and who I am.
A community. Remember how a community can build a child.
They did. Yeah. The community built the child. The Army built the man, in my case.
Okay.
I take great pride and great satisfaction of the environment I grew up in, and to include the kids I had to interact with. I went into the Army, did those 34 years of service to my country.
Wow, 34 years.
34 years, but this whole time I recognized that the American taxpayer, to include the taxpayers in Carbon County, were providing me incredible opportunities, training, education. Of 34 years, over 12 years were formal training and education. So think about that, and I used that for 34 years. I couldn't simply retire and just not use it. I thought, well, let me come back, because our children love this area, because this was their one anchor. They're military brats, which is a very proud term for them. But this was their one anchor, this area. So let's come back to this area. And that also gave me the opportunity to show my gratitude for the investment that the individuals and the county, the taxpayers, have made in me. It's that return on investment is really what the citizens are getting. All that training and education that they have invested in me, I'm giving back to the community as a commissioner in Carbon County in 2019.
And, your passion is evident. I mean, you can just tell. I mean, how many people would get all the ledgers and budgets and go through them so they could be prepared to talk about the issues and the things that are, what they feel are the most important issues facing Carbon County residents today.
Yeah, I mean, I have, I've been through the county code, the budget, which is 450 some pages,
Wow.
the Carbon County Comprehensive Plan, all those documents that are critical to good government, to good administration and good policy making, which the responsibility falls to our county commissioners. And there's always room for improvement. However good or bad we think individuals may be doing, we can always take programs to the next level. And you need to bring in new thoughts, new ideas, some of them, let's say, unconventional, as I like to say, based upon my military experience, and look at the problems that we have from a different perspective to see if we can actually make progress towards, let's say, a county of opportunity. Bob, my vision for Carbon County is really we create a county where there's jobs, low tax rates, because that does bring in jobs and economic development. There's recreation, there's entertainment, and all these are magnets. These are magnets so that when our children and grandchildren go off to trade school, college, or the military, at some point in their lives they say, you know what, I want to come back to that wonderful county. Right. And when I come back to raise my children, or after maybe retirement from my first career, I can give back. And there is such a great quality of life here that it's no debate about, well, should I settle in Allentown, Lehigh Valley, or should I come all the way back into Carbon County? I want to create that magnet that they will be enticed to come back to Carbon County after they've had these life-broadening experiences.
Right. And, I worked in radio in and around the Pocono region, but primarily, in Monroe County for 32 years.
Yep.
And I saw a lot of people grow up, go to school in Monroe County, and then leave the area.
Yes.
But then a lot of people from New York and New Jersey moved into the area and then would commute. Mm-hmm. But the people who were born and raised there, many of them didn't come back there and left and went outside the area, which, it was kind of sad to think because you're losing sort of that fiber and that initial infrastructure in your residence in that county, know, and unfortunately, you would like to see more people stay there or come back, but you see a lot of people coming back to Carbon County. I mean, beautiful area.
Absolutely. As we are both blessed and have some challenges with our natural beauty. Very difficult for economic development.
My whole life it's been like that for me. I was blessed, and then I was challenges with my natural beauty. It's tough.
Yeah. So, a lot of people say, well, you know what? We have few areas where we can maybe emulate, do things like they do up at Humboldt, the industrial area up at Hazleton, which is a big magnet, or down in the Lehigh Valley. But if you just go out 903 here to where the Northeast Extension and I-80 comes together, State Route 940, I think, is right up there in Kidder Township. That's an area of opportunity for development because you have the superhighway structure. But I think PPR, Penn's Peak Radio, is a perfect example of you don't need a superhighway. It might be an information superhighway. So you don't necessarily have to, let's say, clear 50 acres and have a giant distribution center. You can create opportunity in a much smaller footprint.
A pocket here,
a pocket
there.
here.
Right.
You leverage technology, the information highway, not simply the superhighways that we have. And we have to have a diversity, just like your investment portfolio, right? For Christmas, you're going to put some money in your savings account. You might have a Christmas club account, and you might have some money stuck in your mattress. Same thing with economic development. You have to have light manufacturing. You have to have information technology, services. You have to find that right mix, and you have to have a plan, a strategy, and you need good leadership to carry it out and not simply leave that plan, sit on the desk and collect dust, which unfortunately it seems we do probably too often.
Okay. Chris Lukasevich, the 2019 commissioner candidate here in Carbon County, the C4 candidate. I like that. We'll talk more about that when we come back. Let's take a time out, and we'll come right back with Chris and more vital information, things to make you go, right here on Penn's Peak Radio.
34 years ago at a military language school, I saw Chris Lukasevich, and it was love at first sight. As we got to know each other and began dating, I was so impressed by his integrity, leadership, and work ethic. All these years later, those feelings have only intensified as year after year, he's never wavered in his standard of excellence in all he does. Chris's decades of military service have instilled in him an attitude of selfless sacrifice and devotion to our great nation. More than an exceptional leader professionally, he's a loving husband and doting father, not only to our son, but also with our special needs daughter. Now the soldier has come home, not to rest, but to continue to dedicate his efforts to improving the lives of the residents of Carbon County. When he says, if it matters to you, it matters to me, he means it. He sincerely wants to do what's best for Carbon County. There's no one who will work harder and smarter for you than Chris Lukasevich.
I'm Chris Lukasevich, candidate for Carbon County Commissioner in 2019. I approve this message.
Man in the studio with me now is similar, and that's Chris Lukasevich, who wants to become one of the next commissioners here in Carbon County in 2020.
19, yeah. 20 to
20
take
is
office.
when you,
when
you take over in
Right.
2020, January.
Yep.
But you got to run next year. So now this has been something that you've been working on for the past couple of years, right?
Yeah, we started in August 16 by starting to attend the county commissioners, the Board of Commissioners meeting, as it's formally referred to, the salary board, the retirement board, the prison board, the election board, the planning commission board, to understand currently
I covered all those meetings, man, up in Monroe County.
they can be a killer. And
yeah.
Unfortunately, in some of them, you really don't learn much. And that's partly due to a lack of transparency
Yeah, a
in
lot of it's
government.
rubber stamp. They do a lot of the stuff behind closed
Closed
doors.
doors.
And then at the public meeting, approved, and that kind of thing. You're right.
Yeah, it is. And, what we are relegated to having to do is a right-to-know request. And I believe I want less right-to-knows and more you already know.
Yeah, more
So how do we
accountability, more transparency.
Right. Talk about transparency. I have this annual report from Walmart right here, right? So what's so important about this? Well, every year, Walmart tells all of its investors how well they're doing. Our county doesn't tell us on a regular basis how well or how poorly they're performing. Something I would like to see every other year, a biennial report. Now, our judiciary in the county, they do a triennial report. Every 3 years, they look at the numbers. But what I want a state of the
county.
Yeah, state of the county. Here's an example of it. Gwinnett County, state of the county. I want to know what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and how we're going to go forward into the future, 3 to 5 years. So we're looking at number of personnel we need, the budget we need, the amount of time, maybe the office space that we need. Our county government from 2008 to 2018 has grown 49%, from 252 to just under 400.
Wow.
Yet, at the same time, our tax rate, our mill rates have gone up well over 39% for county taxes alone. School district taxes have gone up 19%. I would ask your listeners, do you feel county government is more effective and efficient at providing services for residents today than they were 10 years ago? And I think we don't know. There's great people down in the courthouse annex and the courthouse, 76 West Hannah, working really hard for us. But how well are they doing? We don't know. There's no methods and measures of performance. Right. And that's simply saying, hey, in order to tell me how good you're doing, we're going to, let's say, measure the number of marriage licenses you complete in a year. The goal is 90. That's excellent. 80 is good, 70 is poor. Well, if you do 90, great. If you do 70, well, that's not good. What's the problem? Are civil servants not having enough training and education? Then we invest in them, because we're going to hold them to high expectations and high standards, but we're going to give them the tools to meet our expectations. Right. It's not do more with less. It's going to do more with the appropriate tools and resources. And that may be technology. All right, let's stop handwriting. Let's get a computer program that is going to allow you to do things more rapidly, more quickly, with spell check, and create less errors.
And then you want to check to see if there's duplicity. You want to make sure somebody isn't doing the same job somebody else is doing, because you want to, increase efficiency and productivity and everything else.
Yeah, we talked a little bit, Bob, and I want to get back to the Lehigh Valley, which has just seen an incredible explosion of goodness, of opportunities, quality of life down there. A significant portion of the workers in Carbon County do indeed commute down there. According to the Census Bureau, American Community Survey, the average commute for a Carbon County worker is 30.2 minutes. Well, that doesn't sound bad, but according to that survey, that is the longest average commute in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has another one. They rank us 7th worst commute of 67 counties. But the Census Bureau says 30.2 is the longest average commute in the state of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Now think about this, because I think of some of our problems and the genesis of some of the problems we have. You go down to the far side of Lehigh Valley, you're talking about a 45, 55-minute commute because you're almost in
for
Bethlehem.
me, I live in Easton, and I drive down here to Carbon County every day, and it takes me anywhere between 40 and 50 minutes, depending on traffic.
That's right.
flow.
And so that's 2 hours that you're not spending with your family. That's 2 hours where you're not at a baseball
My
game.
wife might like that.
Right, indeed, and mine also, and that quiet time sometimes can be beneficial
Right.
because you can clear your mind and think.
Exactly.
But the fact is, you're on 22 running through traffic,
Right.
and so you're not,
And
your
it's a
mind isn't
stressful
clear.
situation,
It's stressful,
those kind-
so
yeah.
that impacts your quality of life. So you're not home for dinner. You may not be getting your son, your daughter, your grandchildren, off to school or getting them off the bus. And so if parents aren't interacting with children on a regular basis, we'll see higher rates of problems and challenges.
Right.
So everything kind of comes back to the family unit and creating a quality of life. I don't want our workers necessarily having to commute to the Lehigh Valley. Well, why are they doing it? Well, the average worker in Carbon County on a weekly basis earns $699. That same worker in the Lehigh Valley, $902.
Wow.
Right, so $200. Now you say, well, I'm going to travel to Lehigh Valley because then I'm earning $200 more a week. Yeah, but now gas is over $3 a gallon. Traffic is getting difficult, more congested. Your
Right.
commute is longer.
Wear and tear in your car. Yep.
Wear and tear. Turnpike tolls are now going up 6%, was just announced.
Right, unless you're like that lady who $91,000 in turnpike
and
tolls.
a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, they fine her $10,000, 200 hours
Yeah.
of community service. So
Yeah.
if you give her $10 an hour for community service, it's $2,000.
Yeah.
So she's still getting away with. She ripped off the state for $78,000.
Right.
Now, if you steal $78,000 or I
Yep.
steal $78,000, we're doing jail time. Right?
I suspect I'd be up in the Carbon County Correctional Facility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and God love the Turnpike Commission trying to keep up, but this
Yeah.
woman was doing this since 2012.
Yeah.
You got to be on top of this.
Yeah.
You got to be more efficient and hit these scoff laws after they do it 6 or 7 or 8 times.
No, that's right.
Not over 1,000 times.
Right.
That's inexcusable.
Yeah, obviously there's an information gap there or a tracking gap.
Right,
You know, it kind of talked about, again, this is a state issue, but
Right.
it impacts us. So we have the highest state fuel tax for gasoline. It was about 58
Oh,
cents
yeah,
a
liquid
gallon.
fuels. And it doesn't
Right.
usually go, and I found out years ago, I did an investigative
Yeah.
report. Liquid fuels were supposed to go to fund our bridges and road repairs and highway repairs and infrastructure repairs, right? A lot of that money was going to fund the Pennsylvania State Police.
Right, it's going into more of a general use fund.
Yep.
Well, think about this. So what do we get for 58 cents on the gallon? We get oil and chip. We don't get real macadam roads anymore. They oil and chip everything, right?
Yeah,
And
248. Look at 248.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and where we live, this area, northeast Pennsylvania, the freeze-thaw cycle kills roadways.
Yeah.
And you have the potholes and you have the gaps and everything else. And you're right. Oil and chip, it's a temporary solution, but it's not a permanent solution.
No.
And unfortunately, when you drive down 248 every day and everything else, your car's boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And now they're doing some of these bridge projects. So then you end up with a beautiful new bridge surface.
Right.
But then the roadway service leading to and from the bridge, your car's going, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then you have the underneath, you have the water that basically eats away at the support structure of the ground underneath the macadam. So then you have those ripples and right. You're right. I mean, it's basically a Band-Aid on a huge cut.
Yeah. What a poor return on our investment, to be honest.
Yep.
58 cents a gallon, and we get oil and chip and oil, versus good macadam durable roads that'll last us.
And then you
much
drive
longer.
into Ohio or you drive into New Jersey, you're like, whoa. I mean, real quick story, and I won't take up all your time.
No,
but
no, it's
we
good.
went out to the NCAA Wrestling Championships in Cleveland, Ohio last year. We drove across the state of Pennsylvania, and as soon as we got into Ohio, it was like, your car's not going to move.
Yeah, right.
And my buddy goes, man, look at the difference. And you don't realize it till you're out of state and you're driving down into Maryland or you're into New York State or you're into New Jersey or Ohio. It's amazing. In Pennsylvania, Over the Road Truckers magazine, every year they rank Pennsylvania as the worst highways and roadways in the country.
Right. So what are others doing right that we're not doing right? And that's about reaching out and finding best practices. How do you become more effective, more efficient? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You talk to your neighbors. hey, how are you able to do this for less, do it more effectively, achieve greater results? I think that's something we need to always be looking at. Don't just think that you have the solutions. You probably don't. And if you need to find solutions, there's probably someone out there who's already faced a very similar challenge that you can borrow from. But you got to be talking to people. You got to be talking to your neighbors, your counties, your municipalities. Those 23 municipalities of Carbon County need to be talking on a regular basis. Sure. And fortunately now there is a growing, council of governments that is working towards that.
Good.
So we understand what's going on in the different municipalities. But I will tell you, there are significant disenfranchised communities here in Carbon County. If you go up to Luzanne, Packer, Lehigh Township, they don't see themselves necessarily as Carbon County. Just like Palmerton more associates with the Lehigh Valley, psychologically
right. Well, when
speaking.
you hear Lehigh Township, same thing. You think of Lehigh County. You don't think of Carbon County.
Right. So you have this, and even like Jim Thorpe and Lehigh, they're kind of the epicenter geographically speaking of the county. And they seem to have more attention and more focus of the county. I've spoken to gentlemen up and ladies up in Luzanne, Packer Township. Again, they think they're an afterthought. Everything Jim Thorpe this, Jim Thorpe that. That needs to end. There needs to be not necessarily equity, but again, we need to raise the ship for everyone. And when we develop long-range plans, we have to be thinking what's best for everyone, not just community X, Y, or Z.
Right.
How does it impact? How will it benefit? And I think right now we're too focused on, and you talked about the CDBGs, the community development block grants and things of that nature, that they're going to help out in a different county, one particular area, not considering how it may impact or what's in the best interest of the collective.
And also, from this point of view, as Carbon County, if you become a Carbon County public official, you need to reach out to those who live in the Tamaqua area outside of Carbon County, but close enough where things in Carbon would affect them. And and it's funny, some of the best ideas are not your own ideas.
That's right.
Like in radio years ago, we used to do different contests, and other radio stations, all of a sudden you'd find, a year or two down the road, they're doing our contest, but it was working effective.
Emulation.
And we like that worked.
Yeah.
So sometimes you borrow things from other people and ideas, and you put your minds together and come up with some really good solutions.
Yeah, and often, and that brings up the thought of, I was thinking about, well, how does the county government here, because this is one I've invested a lot of time in researching. I did an internship in Carbon County government. It seems like when there's a challenge or a problem, the solution is let's hire consultants. Well, in the Army, while we do some hire consultant, our first thought is let's bring together our people. Let's form an internal working group and see if we have the skill set and knowledge to solve the problem first. I'll tell you, in county government, it's let's hire consultants. Let's spend money to have someone else do it for us. And then you don't have true buy-in. Okay, you might bring people in, but the fact is you don't have true ownership.
Right, they're not invested in the process.
They're not invested in the process.
And I saw that with several school districts in Monroe County where they're going to build a new school and are looking to do this and that, and then they bring in consultants.
Right.
And the consultants say, okay, we're going to do this. And as it turns out, they crap the bed, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And it turned out what the consultant suggested in the long run was the worst thing that ever happened to those school districts. And then you're left with now abandoned school buildings and things like that, or a school that you didn't need to build for, $19 million or whatever. And then the taxpayers are the ones left holding the bag. So you're right. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And the taxpayer, and that brings the issue of, fiscal responsibility. I think what I'm hearing from people is that our county government seems to be more tax and spend. Again, we're not thinking out 3 to 5 years with our budget. We're short term. What's good for today? Now, we do have a capital investment fund, and that's kind of putting money away for those big projects. But Carbon County has 4 big projects coming up. A 66,000 plus square foot administration building, a bypass or connector to the D&L Trail in Jim Thorpe, maintenance garage, which has already been contracted, and an emergency operation training center, $14 million up on the Broad Mountain. And again, we need to have the best trained, equipped EMS, emergency service personnel in really the state of Pennsylvania. We need to do it in a fiscally
Yeah, I mean,
responsible manner.
Right.
So, but you take those 4 projects together and you start thinking about, is the revenue there to support those projects? We assume it is, but is it? Well, we really don't know. Well, what happens once those turbines, for example, start going up in Penn Township? What's going to happen? London School of Economics, Forbes magazine will tell you land assessment, residential land assessment values are going to drop.
Yep.
So what does that mean? That's less revenue into the county coffers and the school districts. There's $865 million of residential property value in Towamensing, Lower Towamensing, Penn and Kidder townships. Those who would most likely be impacted by reduced assessment. There's going to be a tsunami of people lining up at our tax assessor's office asking for reassessment.
Sure. So
now how that
$865 million will be reduced maybe to $650 million.
That's right. So, so how does that impact? You have to be thinking about that when you do your budgeting process. Worst case scenario, best case scenario. So that's borrowing that we talked about our neighbors in private corporations. What do? They do a 3 to 5 year budget looking at best case, worst case scenarios. We don't necessarily do that, or we don't do it well in county government at this time. And these are one of the things that I'm doing my MBA, my Master of Business Administration in Lehigh, this realization of how to use best practices from business are so applicable in government, and we have to have that collaboration and that understanding of those best practices and leverage them when applicable or appropriate.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for coming in and giving us all this time. Chris Lukasevich, candidate for Carbon County Commissioner. I'm sure we'll have you back again in the fall. We can talk more about this. And, boy, I'll tell you what, you've done your homework, man.
Well, thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it.
So thank you so much for stopping in, and really appreciate your insight and sharing your thoughts with us today. Thanks.
You're welcome, and thanks to all your listeners for tuning in today.
All right. It's Chris Lukasevich, Carbon County Commissioner candidate next year, so follow him. I mean, do you have a website?
C4 Commissioner. C4 like the military explosive, c4commissioner.org. And you'll see all the digital billboards, my Facebook page, C4 Commissioner. Please visit it.
Yeah,
learn more about me.
C4. I knew that's where it came from. I was going to ask you about that. So, Chris Lukasevich, hey, have a good rest of the week and enjoy your weekend.
All right, thank you.
If it matters to you, it matters to me. You'll be hearing that statement from time to time over the next few months from my lifelong friend and fellow veteran, Chris Lukasevich, United States Army retired. As a veteran myself, born and raised in Carbon County, I'd like to introduce you to Carbon County native Chris Lukasevich, 2019 candidate for Carbon County Commissioner. For 34 years, Chris has served our country in the United States Army, moving through the ranks first as an enlisted man, then through hard work and determination, he finished his career with honor and distinction as a full-bird colonel. Veterans understand the value and importance of living and working in community. Chris knows the bond of community is what connects our small yet unique towns and boroughs into one Carbon County. In addition, Chris brings leadership, which is a common theme built into every level of his career. It is because of that same leadership and determination that I trust Chris Lukasevich will hold your elected officials to do what needs to be done in service to your very own Carbon County. Therefore, if it matters to you, you can be certain it matters to Chris.
I'm Chris Lukasevich, candidate for Carbon County Commissioner in 2019. I approve this message.